This week on LTC News, a milestone for the African community, farewell to the Franco-American, and election talk. Stay with us. Welcome to LTC News, everybody. I'm your news anchor, Al Gentili. Now, when the African Community Center of Lowell was established a few months back, they began looking for a cubicle to call their own. With the support of the Theodore Edson Parker Foundation and Community Teamwork Incorporated, the ACCL now have not only a cubicle, but an entire office, meeting space, and conference room. On October 29th, the African Community Center held a ribbon-cutting ceremony to celebrate the opening of their new home on Merrimack Street.
We were simply looking for a small established office space that will serve as our base to meet with those seeking our assistance and make them feel at home.
It's important for people to have support services or have a place where they can go to get the lay of the land and find out what's available to them and what they should do and what they shouldn't do. And so centers like this are really important. And I commend CTI for having the extra space available and being able to offer it to the African Community Center. The entire city of Lowell extends its deepest wishes to the African Community Center of Lowell as you fulfill your vision of helping new immigrants and refugees become responsible citizens and caring, successful leaders for future generations.
Father, we pray that this place will be used to bring your people together, that Africans will be united, oh God. We pray, oh God, that people will come from the east, west, north, and south and be helped in this place. May it be the beginning of greater things to come.
The world comes to Lowell, Massachusetts, and no better representation than this morning's ceremony and all the good work that I know that will happen here in helping those who are making their way here transition to life in this country.
3, 2, 1.
This agency, the African Community Center of Lowell, to be dedicated to the glory of God and to the service of all God's children.
Contributions of immigrants is ingrained in the heartbeat of Lowell. This city represents one of very few places in this country that immigrants can be embraced and made to truly feel a part of their community. We are indeed an all-American city.
My husband, Paul Songas, was a first-generation American who rose to run for the presidency of the United States. It's a remarkable legacy of this, an opportunity that this country represents, and the refuge for those who are seeking peace and security from challenging countries around the world.
And now we go to Brian Dorrington, LTC Director of Municipal Programming, for his City Council Synopsis.
Hello and welcome to the City Council Synopsis for the meeting of November 1st, 2016. Yes, you heard me correctly, it's November already, which means it's time for me to move from one fashion faux pas to the next and trade in my rubber Crocs for a pair of sheepskin Uggs. Yeah, I know it seems like just yesterday I was basking in the sun, hitting golf balls off rooftops and stomping on sandcastles at the beach. Ah, the joys of summer. The city manager presented a report that outlines improvements to be made at JFK Plaza. One improvement made already was the addition of 18 new flagpoles featuring the flags of various nations that represent Lowell. It was pointed out that Lowell High School currently has students from 64 different nations. The city plans on adding new flags to the inventory and will rotate them every so often. Anyone wishing to donate a flag should contact the mayor's office. The city asks that residents stop submitting flags from Fredonia, Lupaland and North Korea, as they are fictional countries. What's that?
North Korea is a real country.
North Korea is a real country? Oh, okay. Flags for North Korea. Okay. In addition to basic repairs of cracks and erosion, the city is adding green space via a new planted garden, which will include a new space for adding monuments. Later in the night, the zoning board took center stage as representatives from the Pawtucketville Citizens Council expressed confusion and displeasure over the zoning board's use of administrative review. This issue requires a little bit of a backstory, and I will provide it to you. Apparently, what happened was, at the last zoning board meeting, the board made some adjustments to a special permit they granted last year. This was for a new residential development on Varnum Ave. The developer, GPG Varnum, requested that the number of units allowed be increased from 13 to 18, and that the number of parking spaces be reduced from 27 to 25. The developer asked for these changes partly because 4 of these units will accommodate disabled residents. These residents suffer from traumatic brain injury, meaning they don't drive, and therefore the amount of space needed for parking can be reduced. An attorney for the developer presented this plan to the zoning board and asked that it be dealt with administratively. When the board is amending something via administrative review, it is not required that the public be heard on the issue, as it is not a public hearing. Well, this upset some members of the Pawtucketville Citizens Council who strongly opposed this project from its very inception. Now the PCC is looking for clarification on what exactly administrative review is, when it can be used, and if it can be overturned. In my own layperson's research, I found the process of administrative review to be used in cases when slight changes need to be made on a project that was already approved. Now, slight, or any of its synonyms, are of course subjective, and one person's slight change is another person's substantial change. It should be noted that many of the councilors sided with the PCC and expressed their own displeasure with the zoning board's use of administrative review. In the end, Councilor Elliott presented a motion asking the city manager for clarification on the administrative review process. Well, that's all I have for you today. Remember, you can watch the meetings in their entirety on demand at ltc.org or tune into LTC Channel 99. Don't forget that Sunday is daylight savings time, so be sure to set your clocks back, or don't set your clocks back and show up early to work on Monday morning. Did someone say promotion? And Tuesday is election day, so don't forget to vote and do that stuff either. Unless you're watching on Wednesday, then you already did forget. Oops.
As everybody knows, the marijuana ballot question is no doubt a controversial one. LTC intern Glenn Cody went out to the streets to find out how some Lowell residents are voting.
On November 8th, voters in Massachusetts will decide whether or not to legalize marijuana for recreational use. Question 4 would permit individuals over the age of 21 to grow, possess, and use marijuana. Governor Charlie Baker and Boston Mayor Marty Walsh oppose the measure, while the ACLU and Representative Seth Moulton support it. What does Lowell think?
I used to be a drug counselor. I'm retired now. And I see alcohol having hard drugs, but alcohol having a worse effect that's legal than any marijuana has ever had on anybody that I'm aware of. The alcohol is legal, cigarettes are legal, they're more harmful than marijuana.
I'm definitely against it. I don't see any point in legalizing marijuana because I believe, this is my opinion, that it's a gateway to harder drugs. I think if they legalized it, it would be more available, but I don't know. I just think it would lead to harder drugs, you know? Yeah, I do.
The state could tax it and potentially come up with tons of revenue to, you know, benefit the infrastructure and just different programs around the state with that additional tax revenue. And taking it out of the hands of drug dealers would be definitely an excellent side effect of that as well.
I think that marijuana can be a gateway drug depending on how you use it. I smoke marijuana every single day because it helps my anxiety, and I don't think it's a gateway drug. It calms me down, it keeps me sane, it helps balance me if anything.
On this question, a yes vote allows for the legalization of recreational marijuana for people 21 and over, very much in the same way that alcohol is currently regulated. Now, if you didn't already know, the FrancoAmerican School, a historical landmark in Lowell, closed at the end of the last school year. Led by former principal Sister Lorraine Richard, the hard work of closing down the building and disposing of its contents has been ongoing. Many vintage items will soon be up for bid in a silent auction.
It's not often that you get a chance to buy a piece of Lowell's history. Now that the FrancoAmerican School has closed, you'll have an opportunity to do just that. The wide variety of items you're viewing are a sample of those that will be up for bid at a silent auction. The original building was built in the late 1870s for well-known industrialist and Lowell and Lawrence mill owner Frederick Eyre. It became associated with World War II General George Patton when he married Eyre's daughter Beatrice. Today, the Eyre Mansion still stands as a lasting monument to Lowell's rich industrial past and the predominantly ornate Victorian architecture of the 19th century. When the Eyre family moved out of the estate, it stood empty for 18 years. In 1908, the missionary Oblates purchased the estate to provide a home for orphaned children of Franco-Americans and to preserve the Franco-American heritage. The Sisters of Charity of Quebec, then known as the Grey Nuns, were invited to staff the orphanage. By 1912, the need for expansion became evident, and the 4-story brick building was added to the original mansion. The children moved into the new space in February 1913, with a Mass celebrated in the new chapel. In June, a solemn benediction of the new space was held. It was about that time that the much-loved grotto and Way of the Cross had been built. Some of the items you see here may very well date from the early days of the orphanage. In the 1950s, day students were admitted to receive their education, and before and after-school programs were added. In 1963, the Franco-American Orphanage officially became the Franco-American School, serving both residents and day students. In 2004, the thriving school was granted accreditation by the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. Sadly, with enrollment decreasing and costs increasing, the school closed its doors this past June. The future of this historic building, of its grotto, and Way of the Cross is unknown. But mementos of its past can be had at the upcoming silent auction.
The silent auction is open to the public Saturday, November 12th from 1 to 4 p.m. Now, in this week's SunSpot, Chris Scott sits down with former State Senator Steve Panagiotakos to talk politics.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Scott from The Sun. I'm The Sun's enterprise editor. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's episode of SunSpot. With me tonight is Steve Panagiotakos, the former state senator, former state representative, and former school committee member. We're going to be talking about next Tuesday, November 8th, Election Day. We're going to talk about some presidential politics. We'll talk about some local politics, and we'll talk about 2 of those 4 ballot questions. And I bet you know which 2 of those are going to be. So why don't we just get right to it, Steve, and we'll talk about the race between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. It certainly has been eventful and interesting to watch. I don't think Trump's out of it yet. What do you think with the latest email dump and with the FBI director Comey getting back into that investigation? How do you think that's all going to shake out on Tuesday?
Well, I would say this. I mean, we have never seen a presidential election like we're seeing now. I mean, this is you could be a fiction writer and not be able to write this script that's going on. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. That being said, we're almost there, and I think almost everybody wished it was today rather than the first Tuesday of November, rather than November 8th.
I think we need another debate.
But that being said, I mean, you know, it has, with all of these different issues that have come up, the polls have gone, you know, like this. But they basically have stayed within a margin of error, except for about a couple of weeks ago. Hillary started to pull away, and they were feeling really strong. This last issue has certainly brought that back. You know,
You're referring to the latest
yes,
emails, right?
Yeah. And what I saw was, you know, just coming over here today, the latest Rasmussen reports is somebody that I really follow on all of these. He had Mrs. Clinton up by 3 points on Friday. He had a dead even today. His is a rolling, and also the LA Times has consistently had it close. Had Trump up by about 3 or 4 today. So, you know, if those are the numbers, it's going to be looks like it's going to be a close overall general election race, or popular vote race. But then you got to look at each town, each city, excuse me, each state. You know what I mean? Each county. You know, and really the states are, you know, you get 11 battleground states probably. You know, the Democrat starts off with, you know, for the most part, over the last 6 elections, I think the Democrat has won 242 of the electoral votes, 19 states in D.C. each time. Right. And the Republicans won 22 over the last 4 elections, 22 of the states, all 4 times, for a total of 180, excuse me. So you got 242 to 180, you got to get to 270. So out of those 11, Mrs. Clinton only has to get 28.
How do you think early voting might affect this? Because many people have already voted. Oh yeah. And I think it was last Friday that Comey came out and said he's going to start reignite the investigation a little bit. So presumably a lot of people have already voted. Right. They may have already voted for Clinton as opposed to Donald Trump. So how do you think that might fit, that dynamic might play here?
Well, the dynamic would be any issues that have happened after that aren't going to have an effect on how they voted. 33 million people, I think, as of Sunday as of yesterday, excuse me, Monday, had voted nationwide.
Tell me, did you take advantage of early voting?
I went to the Smith-Baker, excuse me, I call it Smith-Baker, but the Senior Center on Broadway Street on Saturday and voted. It was great. It was busy, Chris, but it wasn't there weren't lines. You know what I'm saying? But it was busy, and it's really something that's good to take advantage. My father, who's disabled, getting around, I'm probably going to take to one this week in the evening, so that he doesn't have to wait in lines on election day, because it makes it difficult to him. But once you cast that vote, you cast
That's it.
Although I've heard in some states you can actually recall your ballot.
Oh, geez.
It goes. So I don't know how that. I don't think a lot of people take the time to do that. But that being said, still a lot of votes out there.
Do you agree? I kind of agree with this premise that if there was a different Republican in that race and not Donald Trump, if it was Mitt Romney, the former Mass governor, or even Marco Rubio, or maybe Jeb Bush or Kasich, right? That Hillary Clinton would have a real tough time on her hands being elected on Tuesday. That another Republican would have really taken the fight to her and been able to capitalize on all this stuff where Trump hasn't.
I think that goes without saying. I mean, you remember, I think both candidates have the highest unfavorable of any presidential candidates in history since they've been doing the polling. And both of them, they're both well over 60. So I think any of those Republicans would have probably been in the lead right now significantly. And I also think the Democrats, if they put somebody else, even Bernie Sanders, who galvanized a strong core progressive young vote in the primary. And a lot of people didn't think it would be able to flow over into a general election. I think would be doing really well in this right now. So I think the people that didn't make it will probably be, if they were going against the nominee from the other party, most of them would probably have won.
Some people are very secretive about who they vote for. Others aren't. You're a well-known Democrat. You always have been. You're when you're in the Senate, you're a member of the Senate President's leadership team as chairman of Ways and Means. Do you care to share for us?
Not really.
Not really. Because my next question was, did you have to hold your nose and make that vote?
You never have to hold your nose. I mean, you got to make a choice one way or the other. You might not like. You're never going to like a candidate totally, 100%. No one's going to be. You know what I mean? It's just not
right.
Shouldn't happen.
Particularly this year, though, it seems that
this year you've got more to be aggrieved by with the two top choices, anyways.
Right. Let's stick with voting and politics for just a minute before we get on to the ballot questions. There's been a good race right here in the city, in the race for the 18th Middlesex District, which is where you live in the Highlands. Right. That was formerly represented by Kevin Murphy for many years. Yep. Roddy Mom, a Cambodian immigrant, got elected 2 years ago, and he's got a pretty tough fight, it seems, on his on his hands to retain that seat. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that there'd be people galvanizing around him because he came to this country as 8 years old, didn't speak English, educated himself, learned the ways of the country and its traditions, got elected as a state rep. But he's always had people, it seems, nipping at his heels, particularly some members of the Cambodian community. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think
and who you think might prevail?
Right. Well, it's predominantly, usually runs a Democratic district.
Yeah.
So Roddy Mon being the Democratic nominee certainly has a huge advantage. In a presidential year, it's even more pronounced for the Democrats in Massachusetts because a lot of the voters that only come out, it's a younger vote and a more casual vote that only comes out every 4 years, they tend to lean Democratic. I mean, I remember I ran against the same person 3 times for state senate, and we really didn't do much. We campaigned a little, and he'd give me a little, but it was.
I'm trying to remember who that was. I should know that.
But I would say between a governor's race and a presidential race, I remember one time I looked at it, it was like an extra 15,000 votes had come out in the district.
Yeah.
And I got 14,000. Yeah. No way that should happen.
Right.
But it just shows that it goes more leaning to a Democrat or the known name, that type of thing, if you don't get out there and work at it. Gentleman that's running against Roddy, Mr. K, he's been out there. He's been out there for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the first one out with signs. You know what I mean? So he's certainly got some name recognition.
And he took it to Roddy during our Sun debate a couple of weeks ago too.
And his people have been very active, as are Roddy's. So, but Roddy, it's difficult when you run against somebody that's an incumbent, especially the first re-election, unless they really make some major mistakes.
Right.
I don't think people are ready yet to go a different direction. I think they're looking to say, well, you know what, he's just got down there. Let's see how it goes.
Well, it seems that in Lowell and Greater Lowell, when senators and representatives first get elected, unless they do make those big mistakes or they really get jammed up, the seat is pretty much theirs. And as long as they take care of business and work hard with the constituent services, that's been my experience. Let's move to another race, Steve, for the state legislature. This one for Senate, the 2nd Essex and Middlesex district, one of those crazy districts that includes the town of Dracut on this side of the river, plus Andover, Lawrence, and Tewksbury. So we have an Andover incumbent there, Barbara L'Italienne, facing a Republican from Lawrence, Susan LaPlante, whose husband is pretty well known in politics down there. I think he serves on the city council. What's your read on that race? Any read there?
I mean, the read is the Merrimack Valley, especially in these gubernatorial lately, and certainly in the presidential, has been going more Republican. So that being said, you have Dracut, you have Tewksbury, and you have Andover. Lawrence should come in strong for L'Italienne, although LaPlante being from Lawrence and being I think the husband's a city councilor.
Yes.
They could cut that somewhat. But then again, you get Barbara has been I think's been an excellent state senator. I mean, I've worked full disclosure, I've worked on issues and have a lot of respect for her. I mean, she was vice chair Ways and Means when I was chair Ways and Means, so she was on some of the conference committees, and I know how hard she works and how much she cares about her constituents. So as much as people think that there's coattails at the top, I think when you start getting down into legislative races, people know those people personally, so it's a little bit different. So I tend to think it's going to be, it's always close over there for her, but I tend to think that she probably would pull it off.
Great. Let's just move to a couple of ballot questions. In addition to all these races we've been talking about, there are 4 ballot questions that will be decided next Tuesday. 2 have generated a lot of interest. Question 2 and question 4. Question 2 being lifting the cap on charter schools. Question 4 being legalization of recreational marijuana. Tell us where you stand on lifting of charter schools, and how do you think that question, the charter school cap, how do you think that's going to go down?
Right now, I saw the latest poll I saw was October 27th, and that was Suffolk University Boston Globe had it 45.4 to 45.4.
Oh, that's close.
Yeah, close. And a few weeks back, the no's were winning by significant amount. So that's tightened up. Again, there's been a lot of money that's come in there. They've raised about 20 million on the yes side, and about 12 or 13 million on the no side. I think the no's did a great job trying to make make people think that you're making a decision between your local public school or this charter.
It's really pitted that.
So in doing that, they gained some traction. But I think the charter school advocacy has come in and kind of blunted that somewhat. basically, you know, on the merits, you know, because they've got some great stories in some of those schools,
Right.
especially in some of low-income areas, and giving people choice in their education.
Do you favor lifting the cap?
You know what? If I was down there, I probably would have voted to lift the cap.
Okay, let's move on to just the last question. We have about a minute left. Question 4. Legalizing recreational marijuana use. That has generated an awful lot of emotion on both sides too. What's your read on that, and how do you think that one's going to go down? Check your notes.
Let's see. I'm checking my notes
about
because
50
I
seconds.
just saw it. What happened to it? It was about it's about 49-42 in the latest poll. I think it's going to pull away. I think it's going to win.
Yep.
You know,
there seems to be a movement across the country. Some states out west have done it. It's on the ballot in Maine as well.
I mean, you got law enforcement officials for the most part against it. You got medical doctors and societies against it. But yet, it's a popular type of referendum. You know, overall, we've had 32 referendums since 1996, and basically 17 have passed, 15 have been defeated. So we'll see. I think this one passes. The charter school one's going to be really close. The other 3 on the caged animals, humane treatment of animals, should pass overwhelmingly.
And the gambling
and the
question?
gambling should go. The extra slot machine, basically in Revere, is what it is.
Right.
It looks like it's going to get defeated.
Well, Steve, I want to thank you for joining us today. Be sure to get out and vote next Tuesday, November 8th, and thanks for tuning in this evening. Thank you very much. Thanks, Steve.
Got it.
LTC News is a weekly program which airs first every Thursday and then replays daily at various times on channels 8 and 99. Reach out to LTC with comments, questions, and story pitches at LTCN@ltc.org. And as always, I'm Al Gentili. Be well.